Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, the government and political correspondent, and it is spring. You wouldn't know it, we're still getting snow, finally, but we have several guests that we've had on regarding election season. Today, my guest is Paul Berning. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jamie.
Paul is a county board supervisor, and you were recently a guest on the show, and we were talking just generally about the budget process. That was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
For the 2024 budget, right?
Yes.
And now we have coming up on the April 2nd ballot a referendum to increase the levy.
Yep.
And the proponents of it are calling the public safety referendum. It's kind of on the heels of last year's referendum, which had several public safety positions, but a bigger price tag. Some of those positions were filled, and so now the basic sense, and you said it's not really disputed, that it's a referendum for roughly $900,000, 8 positions, and it's going to raise the property tax for homeowners about $5 for every 100,000. So on a $500,000 house, it'll be about $25.
Yep.
Now, we had the sheriff, head of DHS, and the county administrator on explaining the rationale for the referendum. And now you bring a perspective from one of 4 or 5 people who voted against it out of the 19 county board supervisors, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And so what is your take? First of all, did I get that right about the number of positions, the dollar amounts, and the impact?
Yeah, I'm not gonna dispute any of those numbers because they are what they are.
Okay. So, but you're saying that there is $900,000 already in the budget that we could pay for these extra positions.
Well, it's possible to utilize that. I'm not necessarily saying that it's already designated for that. Year over year, we have something that a pool of money that spills over from our operating levy. So let's take it a step back before we even get into that, so that people at home can, if they don't understand how their property taxes work, we can talk a little bit about the county side and how when the county levies for a property tax payment, what does that look like and what are those dollars? So our county budget is roughly $120 million. And of that, in 2024, $45 million of that is going to be assessed against is going to be levied against property. And the taxpayers then write a check, and that money goes to the county, and then that's how we help fund part of the $120 million of our budget. That $45 million is broken down in a couple of different ways. One way is operationally. So there's, in the state of Wisconsin, operational dollars, there's a cap to what local governing or taxing authorities can actually tax property owners. And Jamie, you're familiar with this from the school side.
Right. School side, we are getting close to, if not at, that limit. A lot of our municipalities, city, village, townships, but it also applies to the county.
Yep, that's right. So up until a couple years ago, you had 5 taxing authorities. Now you're down to 4. So when you open your property tax bill, you'll see a line for your municipality, wherever you reside, your business, wherever that is located, whether it's a town, a village, or a city. There's a line on your property tax that goes to that municipality to fund whatever government functions they need to fund. The next line is a school line. Okay, so everyone in my district resides in the Hudson School District, so the city of Hudson would be on their property tax line for municipality. The school district of Hudson would be the next one, and then St. Croix County is the next one, and that's what myself and 18 others on the board impact is that line on the levy. So that line item is broken up into 3 sections. One is a dollar amount that we can levy for operational use. Mm-hmm. So what we use for day-to-day to pay our employees, anything that's an ongoing operation. Then there's a second part of that levy, which is capital expenditures. So things that we borrow for. Things that we borrow for that can only be used for capital expenditures or one-time uses. We cannot borrow to operate the county. Right. So hopefully that makes sense. We can't put payroll on a credit card like sometimes a business owner has to do to make ends meet. The third line is a special tax assessment. Part of what's included in that is basically the county's, the major part of that is the county's levy against usage for libraries. So if your municipality does not have a home library inside of it, so for instance, the town of Hudson is no longer a part of the area library, the county now assesses a tax against usage of the City of Hudson Library and other surrounding libraries, and then divvy it up by usage accordingly. So one line item on your property tax bill, St. Croix County, breakdown of three distinct areas that those are broken down with. The one that we're tackling in this referendum specifically is an operational levy limit override. So the state of Wisconsin has said you can only tax to a certain amount for operations. In this case, we're going to the taxpayers. Our board approved a referendum to go to the taxpayers to ask them on the April ballot whether or not we are going to be allowed by the taxpayers to raise that operational levy tax by $896,000 every year until we repeal it or the people repeal it.
Indefinite.
It's indefinite. It will always be there no matter how home values fluctuate or whatever happens there. So what happens is year over year, we tax that operating levy, we tax the debt service, and debt service can only go to debt service.
Right.
Special use tax can only go, really, it's mostly, if not all, library. And operations, well, if we don't use all of that money, it then spills over the next year into something called an undesignated fund balance. And that's where year after year, for quite some time, we've used that to fund cash projects instead of borrowing. So for the most part, it makes sense, because if you can pay cash for things, let's do it, right? That makes the most sense. We're living in pretty unprecedented times, I think, with what was going on between 2020 and 2023, all the money that's been printing, people with their jobs. The camera's going to love that, aren't they? People losing jobs, inflation, cost of goods. There's so many different areas that our taxpayers and our residents are trying to tackle, business owners, that I just think it's grossly unfair to go to them and ask for $896,000 when consistently over the last decade, we've had right around $3.5 million that we've moved from the operating between sales tax, and there's also sales tax that it plays into that too. Between sales tax and the operating levy, it's spilled over about $3.5 million every year that we use for projects like building new camper cabins at a park or adding a bike lane out in the country or whatever it is that we end up doing.
These are budgeted expenditures?
Well, these are planned out expenditures that we put on a capital improvement project over the course of 5 years. And so every year, the existing board, so in this case, 2023 and 2022 and 2023 boards looked at it and said, okay, we want to keep this at year 3, move this back to year 4, move this up to year 1, and then we use that cash to pay for it, or we have to put our feet to the fire and borrow for it. The way I look at this is if we've really been overtaxing on the operating side and we need these positions, we should be pressing that operating levy right to the nth degree, right to the red line. And the reason that is because adding another $896,000 in tax burden to the residents of St. Croix County when we already have a lot of that money either through under budgeting, not budgeting, positions not being filled, positions being vacant, turnover, whatever that may be. I think it's fair for us to look at that and dig in a little bit deeper and use that money to be able to solve that operating issue and allow the levy to catch up. We're in a very growing, we're in one of the fastest growing, I think the second fastest growing county in the state of Wisconsin. And so to sit here and think that that's going to slow down anytime soon, I don't think that is, because of our proximity to the Twin Cities, I-94. This is a beautiful, beautiful place to live, work, and raise a family. So I think I think we can find it. If not all 8 positions, we can take another step this year after the levy referendum doesn't pass.
Okay, so the last referendum didn't pass. There was, about 3 times as many positions, 23 or 24, whatever, that they were trying to fill. And then they ended up filling 13 of those and decided that instead of another 11, they only need 8. So that sounds like there's doing some shifting there. So what was the discussion to get those other positions into the budget? Why couldn't you get these 8 in there? What was the discussion about?
I think we wanted to make sure that sales tax revenue continued to come in at a good pace. And frankly, with the price of goods right now, I don't think you're going to see unless there's a massive drop off in spending, you're not going to see a huge decrease in sales tax revenue, because when things cost 20, 30% more than they did, and in some cases double what they did 2 or 3 years ago, some of those items people still need to buy. Toilet paper and paper towels and home goods. So the drop off I don't think is going to be as dramatic, even if there is a drop off in actual quantity of goods sold. Where we're just making sure that we're in a good spot so that we're not running the red line on year 1.
Yeah, and I get that, but the sales tax revenue is going to fluctuate somewhat, and you expect it, and you got to project the budget out. But is it a zero-based budget for 2024?
That I would have to look at that again. I'm not quite sure. We're pretty close to zero base, but I know we have.
But I mean, they don't build in $3.5 million surplus and then say,
correct.
We'll be able to divide this out later.
That's right. So part of it is we've grossly under budget. Where we really under forecast for in the budget is sales tax, and we've done so by quite a bit over the course of 10 years. And so what we're finding is that money is consistently there. Even the state projections, we've done a good job of coming in and being conservative with those numbers, which is not a bad approach. But like I said, I think the right approach right now for our taxpayers is to redline that until our tax base catches up with new homes and new business development. TIF districts expiring in the next few years, those will all help us catch up. But I think the argument can be made that we have it. We just need to find it, and also maybe a little bit more patience in these types of areas.
All right. Well, was there an effort to introduce any of these 8 positions into the last budget by you and the 4 others that didn't vote in favor of this referendum?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Actually, there were less positions than, it was like 12, 13 positions that we had gotten approved in the 2024 budget. We actually had quite a few less. Myself, Supervisor Shirley from New Richmond made the argument that we made such a big fuss about needing those positions, and why we weren't putting that to the top of budget priorities was a disservice to our taxpayers. And we thought that was a little bit disingenuous to sit here and say about how overwhelmed everyone was. Which they are. Let's not mince words. Our law enforcement need backup. They need our help. They're grossly overworked right now and underappreciated, specifically in America as a culture. And so they need our backing, and they need support, and they need backup. The problem is when we went and said we're going to push for this, it was we were told we'll make do, or we'll make through. And so Supervisor Shirley and I thought that just doesn't sit well with us if we were pushing it as a big deal. So we made a stand during our budget final budget meeting and said we want to add these in. I think I said I would vote no on the budget if we didn't add those in. So we took a hard stand to add a concerted effort to add some of those back in so that we could get more law enforcement. So
so you are advocating for a no vote on April 2nd, with then what will be the course of action if that no vote is the majority? Well,
we have committees of the whole that are coming up. We're going to have to roll our sleeves up and figure it out. Like I think that's on us as elected officials. I don't like putting this decision on the taxpayers and making them have to think of one more thing. Like, I know my neighbors got kids graduating, some are looking at retirement, others are retired, and to make them look at one more issue to vote on, that's why they elect me to go there and make these decisions. So
you're not going to be opposed to these positions, because I mean, when they were being described by the sheriff and the county administrator, it sounded like some things that we could really use in this county that's about 100,000 people now.
Yeah, we're approaching on that. The argument can be made on a few of the positions. I'm not going to sit here and say that all of them I agree with. I don't think there's a few that I don't think we need necessarily to keep going. But we'll save that argument for when we're in the committee of the whole. I have some things in place that I want to present while we're in those committee meetings. I want to make sure that it's abundantly clear. My position in this, and this was touted before with me being a no on the referendum last year, I want to make sure that it's abundantly clear that I am not the anti-law enforcement. This is not defund the police. I'm not taking an unsympathetic approach to those with drug or mental health issues, because it is a real thing, and we've talked about it ad nauseum at the county board. The big thing is, it's our taxpayers right now. And the school's gone to referendum a couple of times in the last few years. The county now, this is round 2 in 2 years. People are struggling. It's not easy out there. There's a lot of people working second jobs. Houses are unaffordable. There's a drug epidemic out there. There's a lot of things going on right now that are making things not great for my neighbors. So I think it's on me as an elected official and the 18 others that I serve with to roll our sleeves up, put our minds together, and figure out how to do this without going to the taxpayers and saying, hey, we need more money.
Okay. So, but you don't have a specific plan on how to get these 8 positions, or 6 of them if there's a couple that you don't agree with, but there's not a specific plan yet on what that rolling up of the sleeve will look like?
Well, not anything here, but there's a few things that I took notes on that there's a couple things that I wrote down that we're going to make priorities. So, I mean, there's some things that we can do from the health insurance perspective, from a county benefit, that we're working on that'll free up dollars. It's actually a better deal for the employees. Chairman Long and I, and Chairman Long has discussed it we've discussed it in committee meetings.
Okay.
That type of
some
reformation.
savings in health insurance?
Yep, totally. The other thing is we've got a very high undesignated fund balance. I think we're approaching 40%, and that gives us a very good bond rating. But I think we might be a little bit higher than we need to be. That's a lot of money sitting outside of the private sector, not working, and or not being used to offset some of the debt service that we have out there. So looking at allowing our operating levy to catch up over time, while maybe looking at using some of those capital improvement projects by dipping into those undesignated fund balances and making sure that we're not holding on to too much cash as the county, I think that's very important. And I've actually had several constituents reach out to me on that, and one of them in particular has pressed my feet to the fire quite a bit on it, and kudos to him and his wife. Actually, they both have done that. But there's ways to do this without going and saying we need more money than the state told us we could take. And now it's a matter of putting our heads together. There's 19 of us. So if I had the magic wand, I'd use it. I don't have a magic wand, nor do I have a printing press. to print more money, but we'll be able to figure it out. And if it's not all 8 this year, we'll get it figured out.
Okay, all right. Anything else you want to add on this?
Not really. Man, it's been a tough couple years on a lot of people, and I'm working as hard as I can to be as efficient with the tax dollars that we're given by both the residents and the business owners of this county. And we appreciate their support, and we appreciate everything law enforcement is doing, especially when they back up our guys in the city of Hudson. I mean, that's a big deal. So anything else on this subject? No. I just encourage people to vote no and ask your county representative to roll their sleeves up and put their heads together with the other 18, and let's figure this out.
All right, very good. Paul, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our viewers for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. The election's coming up, about 11 days away. Please be informed and get out there and vote on April 2nd. And keep watching.